All right, so I'm going to be using some Winsor and Newman, Cotman colors for painting the flowers. What colors did I all use? So I'm just starting by putting a little bit of water on top of them so they can rehydrate. I have my brush here. Let's get that a little bit wet. I'm going to do the leaves first just because they will be the easiest, and I'm going to do it on a scrap piece of paper just so that it will contain any of the moisture. And then if I need to move them around, I can do that without touching them. All right, so first off, I'm going to do my leaves. And I have a fairly large brush here. It's a size 12. But for what I'm trying to, the look that I'm trying to achieve, it just covers them a lot faster. Let's use a paper towel here so I can dab my brush off after cleaning it. There we go. All right, so I do want to have some areas of that leaf light, some of them dark. And you can obviously use other watercolors instead if you prefer that. I just wanted an opportunity to use the paints that I have been playing with. And if after you paint them you decide you want a little bit of dark areas in there, you can just dab them in there, and because it's still wet, that water will help them to bleed throughout the die cut. There we go. I'm going to leave that alone. Make sure the brush is completely cleaned off before starting my next one. So this one here, I'm going to use Permanent Rose. And I start it with a lighter color than I really want at the end, but that way I can add more colors to it, or darker colors to it, to get a little bit of lights and darks. Part of the beauty of watercolors is kind of the dance between the lights and the darks. And what I like about having glued my die cuts together and glued the layers is the paint seems to kind of stick right at the edge of the die there, and just kind of highlight it, make it a little bit dark, and I like the look of that there. So I do need to hold on to this a little bit just so that it doesn't move around on me while I am moving the paint around. And you can see that I'm certainly not being careful while I'm painting. Right now I'm just trying to get the color on all the areas so that everything is wet. Now I'm going to add a little bit of the mauve color. So mauve's got a bit of purple to it. And I'm not necessarily putting it exactly the same spot I put it for the first layer. And then a little bit of cadmium red. It's got a bit of an orange tone to it, which is what gives it a little bit of a corally look in some of those areas. And I'm going to mix it with my Permanent Rose so that it's not just a bunch of orange, that it blends a little bit. And these will dry a little bit lighter than what they look like now. So if you're worried about it being too dark, it will dry a little bit lighter. You can always, while it's still wet, add a little bit of water to it. Or you can take your paper towel and you can dab it a little bit just to lighten the colors a little bit. And then I'm going to put a little bit of black in the center. I kind of thought this one looked a little bit like a poppy, so I colored it as such, except I didn't want it to be red. I wanted it to be more of a pinky purple color, and that's the kind of the fun of these die cuts, is you can just have fun with the color. They don't need to be a certain color at all. You can just have fun with it. So I'm going to do a little bit of dark right in here because I think it needs it, but I'm going to set that aside well, I was going to set it aside to dry. Now I'm going to do a little bit there. All right, I'm going to set that aside to dry. This one here, I'm going to make more purpley. So I'm trying to do similar colors to what I did for my sample. But obviously when you're using watercolors, the colors just kind of flow where they're going to flow. So you have some control, but you don't have 100% control, which is kind of part of the fun, seeing what the paints do. And once again, you can see I'm not being super, super careful with it. I'm trying to keep it nice and loose and flowy. So that one was mauve there. Let's add a little bit of my Dioxazine purple here. That's quite dark. But see how it just like immediately goes again around those die cuts? I just love how it does that. It just ends up highlighting them. A little bit of black again in the center, but this one I did it a little bit lighter. So I'm using the same color, but I've just got more water than pigment than the first one there. And if there's too much, I just clean my brush off and add a little bit more. Add a little bit of my permanent rose pink, just get a little bit of pink in there just to tie the two flowers in together. Otherwise, sometimes it looks like why is one there? There we go. So I'm going to let that dry completely. And once it's dry completely, we can start assembling our card.